Hey everyone, it's Alexa Mason with Grace and Cherish, where we focus on interior design through the lens of spiritual formation and hospitality. In the last video that I did, I focused on elements of an interior. We're talking about what is it that makes up a room, and we focused on focal points. This time, we're going to be talking about three different elements. They are our planes, they're openings, and they are sources of light. So first, we're going to start with planes. What are planes? So not the things you fly in, we're talking about planes in your room. If you look around, you're going to notice that you have vertical planes and you have horizontal planes. The vertical planes are your walls. The horizontal planes are your ceiling and your flooring. Why do they matter in a room? They make up the room, right? They make up the shell of the room. And when you look around, you see that those planes are really what take up majority of, when you think of your eye space, like how much your eye is seeing, it's taking in a lot of those planes. They are very significant in a space. Now, some people, and you might notice in different design trends and things we're seeing even more, although I shouldn't say trend, because painting the ceiling isn't completely a trend, because there are definitely different parts of the world outside of the United States where I am, where people have been painting their ceilings for a long time. So I don't want to call it a total trend, but I definitely think it is something that we see more of, in particular in the United States, at least for me in the last few years. That's what I've seen. And one of the reasons why I actually love it is because I love that enveloping feeling, just enveloped into a room. When you paint the ceiling, you can notice a difference. I grew up where ceilings were typically white. In fact, the room I'm in right now, the ceilings are white, but it is shiplapped, so it's a little bit different because there is some sense of texture. There are a lot of lines in it that we'll talk about lines in another video. But my point is with your planes, there is a significant amount of square footage that they take up. So thinking about them, being considerate and how you utilize them can really add to creating whatever it is, that environment that you're hoping for in your space. It can really be helpful toward that. Now, paint is one of my favorite ways to consider how to really add a sense of coziness or whatever environment I'm trying to create in my space, and utilizing the ceiling, doing the walls. Those are wonderful ways to do that, and also usually the least expensive, the more affordable option for people. Wall treatments, of course, are wonderful, and depending on, again, budget, some things are really inexpensive to do, like board and batten is a really inexpensive way to add some texture and depth to your walls. But again, the planes are important, and you want to consider them because, again, they take up so much of your visual space. So when you think about a ceiling, or especially when you think about flooring, you really want to consider, when you're doing flooring, like how much space is it going to be taking up? I have flooring that is different in my bathroom or in my laundry room, mudroom area compared to the rest of my house, because most of my house, it's all the same flooring. So when I was selecting the flooring, I really was focusing on something that, a color that I liked, that I knew would work with the different paint colors I'd choose in different rooms. I wanted it to be pretty, but I didn't really want it to be something that stood out to you all the time, because there's so much of it. I wanted someone to kind of, you walk in and it just flows with you, but it's not jarring. Compared to whenever we redo our bathrooms, that and those spaces that are a lot smaller, I know I want to do tile that's really going to stick out to you. It's really going to be like, bam, it's right there, because it's a smaller footprint. And so I feel like I can be a little more creative, a little more quirky, and have fun with it in a different way, because there's less of it. All right. So when we're talking about planes, again, we're talking about horizontal planes, your flooring, your ceilings, and then you have your vertical planes, which are your walls. Now, along with the planes, you want to think about the openings, because again, the planes are the structure, the box, in a way, if you want to think of it that way, of your room. And so they're very important. You want to consider those, what's going to be in them, what's going to be on them. But then you have openings, which again often go into those, at least those vertical planes. Though certainly your horizontal planes, like your ceiling, you might have skylights, and so that's an opening, or at least like a window, because we're talking about openings like doors. We're thinking of windows. So those are all things, again, that you want to consider, and they play together. The openings in my house, for example, I have these openings. You can see these arched openings that go into these different rooms. They're not doors, but they are an opening that impacts the plane, that wall right there. And so those are all things we had to consider when we were renovating our home. One of the things that you want to do is look at windows. Again, what is in the room that you're in right now? What are the openings that are there? How do they impact the room? Do they work for the space that you're working in and you're wanting to design? Now, you can't always change your openings. We happened to be in a situation where we had to renovate and do some big changes anyway, so we were able to be flexible with those openings. We still had to work with openings that were already there, but we had a little more flexibility. That's not always the case. In fact, for most people, that's not the case. So I'm not saying that you have to change all of your openings or anything, but I want you to be aware of them as you're considering what makes up my space. Okay. Planes, I got the walls, I got the ceilings and the floor. All right, openings, we've got these openings with the doorways, we've got these openings with the windows. These all impact the structure in the environment of this space. The other thing that you want to think about is the lighting. Do you have artificial light? Do you have natural light? Most spaces we have both, but not all. There are several places, actually my kitchen is one, where I actually don't have any natural light that comes in. Our little tea room, that's a nook off the kitchen, has one window, but for our house to work for our family, because we had to focus on function first, we had to move the kitchen from one room to another. And even the previous owners where they had the kitchen, the only window they had actually looked into our screen porch. So there really wasn't a lot of natural light, and even if we had kept it in the original spot, where that comes into that room. So I have to rely a lot more heavily on artificial lighting. So that's your lamps, that's your overhead ceiling lighting, that's your pendant lights. Your natural lighting is of course the lighting that is going to be coming through windows. So again, you want to pay attention to your openings because that will help you understand what light do I have or don't I have. And of course, lighting impacts everything else that goes on in your space. The paint colors, one paint color in a room with no light versus that paint color in a room with lots of light, very different. So there's a lot more with lighting we'll talk about in future videos, but again, these are all things that you want to consider and just be aware of as you are taking stock of the space that you're in and the things that you want to do in that space. You want to consider, what are my plans? What do they look like? Okay. What are the openings? What's the light look like? And so in this room, for example, I am in my dining room. This room was actually originally something completely different. The previous owners had it as something different, but we wanted to make it our dining room. And so in the original room, I'll show you a little video. You can see that there are windows along the walls, almost all of them. And then you had windows on the horizontal plane, the ceiling. Now, when we moved in, those things were rotting, they were molded. We couldn't even use this room for the first year that we lived here. We had to just keep it sealed off. Eventually, we renovated it to be able to have it be a part of the house, getting HVAC and all that good stuff. And we kept the windows, the openings on the walls, the vertical walls, but on the ceiling, we decided to shiplap it and do something different. And we actually did add some overhead ceiling lights that are, artificial light. So that light, which we use more in the evening, because most of the day I use these windows, which we have loved having. We had to replace all the other ones. We put these ones in. They're casement windows so they can open up. We get all that fresh air. But I'm saying all that to kind of give you an idea of, in this room, we have quite the mix of, we have the walls with lots of windows and openings, and we have our ceiling that is shiplap, so that adds some texture to the space. And then I have the same flooring in here that I do the rest of the house. So what I love about this is just that mix. This is my favorite room for that. There's a lot of mix of different things that are happening on all of the walls and all of the planes. And when I was designing it, I really wanted to emphasize having this room bring in light from outside into the kitchen, because this room is right off the kitchen. And so it doesn't bring in a significant amount, but it definitely more than if I had just made this entire room all walls with no windows. So that's an example in my own house of how I was considering the different planes in this space and how we wanted to utilize them to help speak to the overall environment and the function that we wanted in this space. It's funny, I had to pause the video because I was noticing that it was starting to get darker. It was getting a lot darker on one side of me versus the other because all the light is coming in from here, but I don't have any here and I don't have fancy camera equipment. So we'll deal with that. But the other reason that you want to think about planes and why it's important, and the reason I'm sharing this is because I've had people, I just had someone at my house on Friday who was sharing about how she's like, I'm looking at my room and I'm considering some of the things that you've shared with before, because she had watched some other videos I've done. And I was like, okay, people are genuinely thinking about this. So my goal is to share this to help you if you are just looking around your space and you're trying to figure things out. And so I'm hopeful that this information will help you as you're trying to plan, because we can't always all hire interior designers, though we love them. Interior designers are awesome and wonderful and provide a lot of great skill, but I know that not all of us are able to do that and access that information all the time. So All right, the reason why you also want to think about planes, about openings, about light is because that also impacts your space planning. We will do another video about that where we can dive into it a bit more, but space planning is all about the flow and how you're moving through that space you're in. It involves furniture placement, which again, you need to know your openings. You need to know where the walls are. You need to know about the lighting and exactly where it's at, especially if you're thinking about seating and you're saying, oh, where am I going to put this sofa? Or because when you put a sofa, you typically have either a lamp or a standing lamp, or a table lamp or a standing lamp, or both on either side of it. You know, those are all things you want to think about. But then you also want to think, well, where are the walls? Because based on where the walls are, I'm going to be considering where my seating is and where my lighting is. And if I have a huge window, I might not put something right in front of it, or maybe I do need to, because that's just the way that the room is structured. You know, these again are all things that once you have an understanding of place for all of those other aspects, the elements of a room, it helps you when you're then going to continue to design your space. And again, I talked about focal points last week, or in the last video. And in that video, again, focal points, seeing how essential they are, how they impact furniture placement and other things as well. Knowing your planes is really going to help you to better be able to put it all together to create a space that works for you and your family, or whoever it is that you live with, whether you live alone, roommates, etc. When you're inviting people in, because that's what I'm hoping we're doing with our homes, because here at Grace and Cherish, we believe that homes are designed and created to be shared. That's what they're meant for, with not only the people you live with, but those you welcome in. So anyway, those are the things that I wanted us to focus on for today. And in future videos, we're going to talk a little bit more about elements of a room. The next one is going to be about lines and the way that lines can be used in the design of your home to have different effects that can help you create, again, whatever environment it is that you're wanting to have. But for today, we'll end there. Thank you for hanging out with me. If you have any questions, anything I can further clarify, please include it in the comments and I will get back to you and answer that. And if it's something that's worth a video, I can make a video about it as well. My goal is truly just to be a helpful guide in designing a home of both beauty and depth. The beauty piece involves some of that, technical side and knowing things to be able to put pieces together. And also it involves, of course, most importantly, you sharing your own story and creating a space that is unique to you. And the depth is what comes through the relationships and the love and all that happens within that space as it becomes its own. And so I'm really excited and I'm really passionate about helping people do that. And so I'm glad you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll catch you on the next one.